What's up, you guys? Welcome to this video, and in this video I'm going to be doing a ranking of Kobe Bryant's 20 NBA seasons from worst to best. Right now we're coming up on 3 weeks since the tragic passing of Kobe Bryant. It's still sort of like tough to accept that reality that he's gone, and just like, man, that life and everything that he had, a legend, just dying at age 41 along with his daughter and those other 7 victims in that helicopter crash. Still tragic and really sad to think about. And yeah, right now he's being honored at All-Star Weekend and all that stuff. And I made a video a few weeks ago about the Kobe Bryant memorial that I went to at Staples Center, and I did sort of a retrospective talking about how I was such a big Kobe Bryant fan, a Laker fan, me being someone here in Southern California. Kobe was my sports life for such a long time, and yeah, just all that sad stuff in that video. But it got me thinking about, okay, with great loss comes a time to sort of celebrate someone's life. And I was thinking, what other video could I make? And I thought, you know what, I'm a bit of a Kobe expert. Let me go ahead and rank all 20 of his NBA seasons from worst to best, just because, like I said, when it comes to Kobe, I am the expert right there, or one of the many experts out there. So I thought it'd be a fun video to do, sort of put my opinions out there. For those people who don't know or aren't NBA fans, don't really know anything about Kobe Bryant when it comes to his on-court accomplishments, this will be sort of a good sort of educational video. And for those people who do know, you can just sit back, relax, and see if you can agree or disagree. Don't worry, the video is just not going to be just like however long, how many minutes of me just talking. I'm going to have clips in between showing highlights and stuff like that. So that out of the way, sit back, relax, and let's get started. At number 20 is the 2013-2014 season for Kobe Bryant. This was the season that he came back from the Achilles injury. He managed to come back. And unfortunately for Kobe, he was only able to play 6 games in this season. He came back, he averaged 13 points, 6 assists, about 42% shooting. Not terrible numbers considering you're coming back from an Achilles injury. But unfortunately, he ended up fracturing his kneecap off the court, not even in the game. And his season was just cut short. The Lakers stunk that season. They started tanking. It was sort of a lost season for Kobe Bryant. So yeah, this season is at number 20. At number 19 is the 1996-1997 season for Kobe Bryant. This was his first season, his rookie season in the NBA, coming straight out of high school. And unfortunately, unlike LeBron James, Kobe wasn't exactly super NBA ready coming out of high school and jumping into the NBA. He was still sort of that skinny little kid when you go back and watch those highlights. But he did okay for himself and ended up averaging 7 points, made all-rookie second team. The highlight was how he won the slam dunk contest, ended up doing his usual swagger and dunks and stuff like that. So yeah, this season is at number 19 for Kobe Bryant. Number 18 is the 2014-2015 season. This was sort of the real season that he came back from the Achilles injury. He had the season before where he only managed to play 6 games. He came back in this season, and considering how old he was at the time, I think he was like 36 or something like that, to come back and average 22 points, 5 rebounds, and like 5 assists. Granted, it was 37% shooting, but that's still kind of impressive, and he did have a decent amount of moments. Unfortunately, his season was cut short about halfway through because he ended up tearing his rotator cuff. But considering how old Kobe was at this point in time, no one had sort of huge expectations, and it was still sort of fun to see him do his thing in this season. At number 17 is the 2015-2016 season, which was Kobe Bryant's final season. Now, Kobe in this season, a lot of it was a struggle because Kobe was never the most efficient player, but in this season, I think he ended up shooting like 34% from the field, averaging 16 points. A lot of times, he was just shooting just way too much given how old he was and just sort of how ineffective. But he ended up announcing his retirement for the season halfway through, and the whole season was sort of like a celebration and farewell tour for Kobe, and that was fine. Of course, the real highlight came at the end of the season, where he managed in his final game at home versus the Utah Jazz, ended up scoring 60 points, and this game just brought me tears of joy. The way that he was just able to muscle through, he shot the ball 50 times, the way the crowd went wild, how he came through in the clutch, hit the go-ahead game winner shot. Even though as bad of a season as it was, sort of statistically efficient wise for him, to end off on that moment was sort of like one of the biggest like drop the mic moments for an NBA player in terms of like going out a legend on top. Even though granted it wasn't like it was in the playoffs or anything, still a really fun way for Kobe to go out. So that's why it's above the seasons which I already mentioned. Number 16 is the 1997-1998 season. This was the first season that Kobe became an all-star in just his second season. What's amazing is the fact that he ended up becoming an all-star and he was still coming off the bench during this season. He was voted in as a starter. So that just goes to show how sort of popular Kobe Bryant was. He ended up averaging 15 points for the season, and it was sort of fun watching him when he watched that All-Star game, him going up in MJ and him Kobe and MJ and Kobe just dunking, doing his thing. Really fun stuff. So Kobe's second season becoming an All-Star earns the next spot on this list. And number 15 is the 1998-1999 season for Kobe Bryant. This was the season right after the one I just mentioned. Kobe again sort of upped his game, averaging 19 points in this season. He ended up being an All-Star again, made the All-NBA team for the first time, All-NBA third team. So he ended up showing that sort of improvement you would want from players for first 3 years, going from 7 points to 15 points and then to 19 points in the 1999 season. Number 14 is the 2004-2005 season for Kobe Bryant. This was his first season playing without Shaquille O'Neal. By the end, everyone knows sort of the drama between Shaq and Kobe. Kobe basically, I'm a Kobe fan, but he basically ran Shaq out of town, wanted it to be his team. So this was his first season without Shaq. And individually, he got off to sort of a tough start when it came to shooting at the beginning of the season. He ended up with decent stats, but he ended up missing sort of a lot of games due to like a shoulder injury and stuff like that. And the Lakers just were not good, finished under 500, had like a 13-game losing streak. Kobe himself, like I said, he had decent numbers, but he was demoted to All-NBA third team, didn't make the playoffs. So yeah, this was a sort of even though Kobe was in his prime, this was sort of a lost season when you look at the fact that they just had nothing going on as a team during this season. Number 13 is the 2003-2004 season. This was the year the Lakers had the super team with Shaq, Kobe, and they added Karl Malone and Gary Payton. Kobe was coming off a great season the year before. This season, unfortunately, was a bit of a step down because he went from averaging 30 points the season before to averaging 24 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, not great efficiency. He ended up 43% shooting, but he was dealing with a shoulder injury, missed a lot of games during this season. He managed to have some really clutch moments, though, when it comes to hitting some crazy-ass game winners. There was a season at the end against the Blazers. He hit 2 crazy three-pointers, and even though the NBA Finals were not a good showing for him at all. Actually, he was pretty atrocious. He ended up hitting a really clutch jumper in game 2 to sort of save the Lakers, tie the game, and help them win their one game in the series. So that's why the 2004 season is next on this list, even though individually, not the greatest season for Kobe during his prime. Number 12 is the 2011-2012 season for Kobe Bryant. Ends up being sort of perfect, going from 12 to the 2012 season. This season, Kobe was getting, older, but he was still, I would say, definitely one of the best players in the league, a top 5 player, in my opinion, top 3 at that time. And for the season, his stats ended up looking really good, man. He had averaged 27 points, like 5 rebounds, 4 assists. So it was sort of, he was really energetic during the season when you compare it to how he was the season before. The problem was efficiency-wise. This was during the lockout season, and Kobe had just like a 2-month stretch where he was just like not taking good shots at all, not shooting well. It was just really hot and cold during the season. Because like I said, he was energized, had some really good games. For a moment there, it seemed like he might have a chance at MVP. But in the end, it just wasn't. It was sort of efficiency-wise wasn't great. And the Lakers, even though they were sort of contenders, they managed to only get to the second round, eliminated by the OKC Thunder. And what would turn out to be Kobe's final playoff run in his final playoff games, ended up scoring 40 points in his final playoff game in the closeout game at OKC. Once again, made All-NBA first team, was an All-Star again. So individually, still a good season for Kobe right here. Number 11 is the 2010-2011 season for Kobe Bryant. So it works out pretty cool again, going from 11 to 11. In this season, the Lakers were coming off the second championship of the Kobe and Pau era, Kobe's 5th and final championship. So this season right here was the season afterwards. And Kobe, you could tell that he was starting to slow down a little bit. He was no longer that killer, that amazing, like, oh my God, best player in the league that we saw from like 2006 to 2009. He was slowing down a little bit, even though he still ended up putting sort of his decent, typical numbers, 25, 5 and 4, solid efficiency for him and all that stuff. But when it comes to sort of the playoffs, it wasn't a good showing for the team. Kobe didn't play all that great in the playoffs. They ended up getting swept by the Mavs. So this was sort of like an average season for him. When you look at his career numbers, the numbers he had in this season, and when you look at the playoff success, the team only went to the second round. Number 10 is the 1999-2000 season for one Kobe Bryant. This season was the season Kobe took that step up to being sort of like the real, like, all-star Kobe Bryant. This was the first season he averaged over 20 points. This was his 4th year. He averaged 22, 6 and 4. Shaq, this was the year he was the MVP. So Shaq was still clearly the best player on the team. And even though, but the Lakers were still a super dominant team. Kobe played his well terrifically. He was still amazing, just killing it in the playoffs. He was clutch, had some amazing moments. The clutch jumper versus the Phoenix Suns to win that game. He had the amazing Game 7 against the Blazers where they made the comeback in the Western Conference Finals. And he had the game in the NBA Finals where he just took over, man. In Game 4 against the Pacers in overtime when Shaq fouled out, took over the overtime, carried the Lakers on his back, and he and Shaq ended up winning their first championship and the first of the three-peat in the Shaq and Kobe era. Number 9 is the 2001-2002 season for Kobe Bryant. This season was the third year of the Shaq and Kobe three-peat. Kobe again played really well individually. Again, Shaq was still the best player on the team, but Kobe still had a really good season, averaging 25, 5 and 5 on 46% shooting. Like I said, he had a good year. In the playoffs, he was clutch once again, hitting some game winners against the Spurs, playing well in Game 7 against the Kings in the Western Conference Finals, and in the NBA Finals, he had a really good showing against the Nets while Shaq still won his Finals MVP. And Kobe managed to win an All-Star MVP in this year and make his first ever All-NBA first team. So this is the year that he took that step up, being like the premier shooting guard in the NBA. So that's why this season is next on this list. Number 8 is the 2012-2013 season. This was a season where Kobe was at age 34, so obviously he's getting up there in age. But even in year, I think this was 17 for him, he was just amazing this season. For context, this was the year the Lakers tried to put that second super team together with Kobe, Pau Gasol, Steve Nash, and Dwight Howard. And obviously, team-wise, it didn't work out quite the well they wanted to. But this season, the Lakers were struggling in the middle of it. And Kobe just put the team on his back. And he just ended up playing at just like an unbelievable level. You know, when it comes to averaging 27 points, he averaged 5 rebounds, averaged 6 assists on 46% shooting. Amazing numbers for a 34-year-old. He was just terrific. And he was just really energetic, too. He had just some amazing dunks. And like I said, at age 34, the type of energy he was playing as, he was absolutely killing it. So this was a season I was really proud to watch Kobe because he was just amazing during this season. Unfortunately, this was the season that he ended up tearing his Achilles in that game against the Warriors, where again, he was amazing to sort of carry the Lakers and bring him on his back. And yeah, once he tore his Achilles, that was sort of the end of the Kobe Bryant we all knew, the sort of superstar Kobe Bryant, because he was never able to recover physically during that, even though he had some okay moments during those final seasons. So the final year that he was Kobe Bryant, Kobe was definitely amazing during the 2012-2013 season. Number 7 is the 2000-2001 season. This was the first year that Kobe really went to sort of superstar level. Because the season before 2000, he went to that all-star level. But in this season, he became a superstar because he went from averaging 22 points to sort of 28 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, his sort of highest efficiency at sort of 47% shooting. Kobe was just like all around. In terms of the Afro days of Kobe, this was definitely his best season. Unfortunately, this was the season that him and Shaq started to sort of butt heads, just because Kobe was sort of coming up as sort of like a dominant player and sort of like a back and forth between those two. But they managed to put their differences aside, and Kobe in the playoffs this year, absolutely unbelievable. The series against the Kings and against the Spurs, 2 tough Western Conference opponents, Kobe was just going off, man. I'm talking games where he has like 40 points and like 16 boards and stuff like that. Kobe was absolutely amazing. And he and Shaq ended up winning their second NBA championship against the Philadelphia 76ers. So yeah, 2001, young Afro Kobe was definitely killing it once again right here. Number 6 is the 2002-2003 season. This is the first of the seasons where we see Kobe just like going off offensively, individually. At this point, him and Shaq were still together, but this was the year Kobe took it up to the level where people were like, okay, wow, maybe this kid who we saw coming out of high school, this is where he becomes sort of like the best player in the NBA. Because Kobe for this season averaged 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, just an amazing season individually. He had just some crazy stuff going on. I'm talking about scoring 42 in the first half against Michael Jordan. I'm talking about a game where he had hit 12 three-pointers, which at the time was an NBA record that held for like over like 10 years or something like that. I'm talking about just like crazy stuff, like a streak of 8 straight 40-point games. Kobe this season individually, like I said, any season you average 30 points was just amazing. And he was just killing it on defense too, averaged like 2.2 steals a game. So individually, this was a fantastic, great season for Kobe Bryant. His first like amazing, like otherworldly kind of season. Unfortunately, this was the year the Lakers sort of three-peat ended. So they didn't quite have the team success but Kobe individually just killed it during this season. Number 5 is the 2009-2010 season. This is where it gets sort of tough to sort of see where you sort of weigh individual success versus team success, but this was sort of a great balance of both for Kobe during this season, just because in 2010 during the season Kobe was absolutely clutch. I mean, just take a look at this highlight reel of game winners that he hit during this season.
Looking, gets it to Bryant. Bryant dribbling, has to put it up with the buzzer. Backs it in! Oh, he backs in the three!
There's the move. 2, 1, miss it!
Kobe. And Kobe will get it for the win. Now Bryant, shot clock at 7. Bryant leads, falling away, puts it in! And the Lakers shot.
Yeah, my boy was absolutely clutch. Amazing clutch moments. And it was a really good, another great season for him, averaging 27, 5 and 5. At this point, the Lakers had just come off winning the championship the year before. So Kobe, this was another year, one of his best leadership years. When it came to the playoffs, he was great once again, averaging like 30 points. They came in the series against Boston, where they lost in the previous time in 2008, and everyone remembers the Game 7 where Kobe, didn't have sort of like the best shooting game and whatnot, but he still ended up playing, for the most part, really well during the series, averaging 28 points, rebounded the hell out of the ball with 8 rebounds, played great defense, and he had his moments where he was like, okay, Kobe, he's doing his thing right here. So yeah, he ended up winning his 5th and final championship, a Finals MVP. Individual-wise, he was also making All-NBA first team, defensive first team, stuff like that. So yeah, all around, this was another really good season for Kobe Bryant, getting that 5th and final title. Number 4, I have the 2006-2007 season. Like I said, it gets sort of tough to weigh sort of the individual success versus team success, because this year the Lakers didn't have much team success. These were the years Kobe was still all by himself, basically. But man, individually, he went off during this season. He was coming off the season before where he was fantastic. This year, though, he had another great season, averaging 31 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He was All-NBA first team, All-Defensive first team, won the scoring title again this year, and he had another crazy streak where it was a week span where he had 50-plus points in 4 straight games. He had like 65, 50, 62, and 50. I mean, them kind of numbers he was putting up, this was during like Kobe's like absolute peak in terms of balancing sort of the high flyer versus that killer like amazing shot maker. Unfortunately, the Lakers didn't have any team success in the playoffs, lost in the first round, but Kobe individually fantastic during this season. Number 3 is the 2007-2008 season. This was one of Kobe's like best leadership years. This was the year they finally got him some help. After he sort of demanded a trade request during the summer, Lakers put together a really good team where they ended up getting Pau Gasol during the middle of the season, and Kobe again continued sort of his great individual play, averaged 26 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and he ended up winning his first and only regular season MVP. What's funny is that he won the MVP this year, and I actually don't think this was like the year he should have won it. I'll get to that season sort of later on during this list, but Kobe was still great during the season. I think it was sort of a thing to where it's like, you know what, Kobe, you've been so great for so many years. We're going to give you this award. Just because I think all around when it came to sort of individual-wise, team record-wise, they were first in the Western Conference. And then just from a leadership perspective, he was really sort of a great leader. And these were just during sort of the happiest moments of Kobe's career right here. They finally got back to the NBA Finals, but unfortunately, Kobe didn't have the greatest showing versus the Boston Celtics. They lost in 6 games. Kobe didn't have sort of great efficiency numbers. But in the end, leadership-wise and everything, getting back to the NBA Finals after the down years, another really good season, great season, MVP season for Kobe Bryant. And number 2 is the 2008-2009 season. This is the year after the MVP season, which I just talked about. And you would look at Kobe's numbers and say, oh, Kobe was, he was, again, great, but not otherworldly. He averaged like 26 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. You'd be like, okay, those are really good Kobe numbers. Nothing like super special. From a leadership perspective, though, I just think this was Kobe's just best leadership year right here. The Lakers, led by him, and then he's got Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom, and everyone else behind behind him. Won 65 games. They were hungry to get back to the championship. Kobe himself was fantastic during the playoffs. Again, averaging 30 points. Was fantastic in the series against Orlando, averaging 32 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists. He won, so it was all NBA first team again, all defensive first team, won the All-Star MVP again for the 3rd time. So everything just came together. I just think this season for Kobe Bryant, when you took everything together, the team record, him in the playoffs, leadership perspective, again, great individually during the regular season, even better in the playoffs. This is my second favorite and I think second best Kobe Bryant season right here. And at number 1 is the 2005-2006 season. Like I said, it's tough to sort of weigh individual success versus team success, because I think the team success ends up being just like makes sort of more of an impact on your legacy, but not when your individual success during a season is so fantastic. And that's what happened with Kobe Bryant during this season right here. With this season, he averaged 35 points a game. Now, before sort of James Harden went off in the last couple of years, that was the highest scoring season average we had seen since Michael Jordan. So Kobe this season, he was on a revenge mission after the Lakers sort of missed the playoffs. Again, these were the years without Shaq and no like Pau Gasol and no like real help. But Kobe, again, putting the team on his back. Fantastic 35 points. This was the season that he had the 81-point game, which is obviously why the scoring average is so high. But again, it had just some fantastic stretches like the 62 points in 3 quarters versus the Mavericks, after scoring him all by themselves. Won the scoring title, All-NBA first team. The playoffs, he had a great moment having the game winner against the Suns, which in game 4, which that obviously goes on Kobe's highlight reel right there. Unfortunately, he ended up losing that series in 7 games after going up 3-1. But I just think from an individual perspective, Kobe, this was sort of like his peak season right here with everything put together physically and all that stuff. So that's why, even though the team success wasn't great individually wise, because Kobe was so great, this is what I have as number 1 as his best season right here. There you have it, all 20 seasons ranked from worst to best. As I'll state, as I mentioned, like how I did in my memorial video, I love me some Kobe Bryant, man. It was a pleasure to have him represent the city of Los Angeles and Southern California, and really just the whole NBA for his 20-year career. And like I said, these past 3 weeks, it's been tough when you just accept the reality that Kobe, he's like, he's gone. He just, all that stuff and the whole career he had and the life he had ahead of him when it came to what he was going to do off the court, the stuff he's going to do with his family, and obviously the future that his daughter had, him training her. Really sad and really unfortunate to think about. And the whole thing puts sort of a retrospective on just sort of how fragile life is, man. Because Kobe Bryant is like the elite of the elites right here. This guy is an absolute titan. And yet, if he can go in just like an instant, any of us can go. So it really shows how you just got to sort of appreciate life, appreciate what you have, cherish every day, and never take anything for granted. That's something I've heard LeBron James talk a lot about in the last few weeks. So obviously the Kobe thing has sort of affected him. And it's sort of affected me too, just because I think, like, you know what, when you leave your house and you're able to sort of come back, you should not take those things for granted, because nothing is guaranteed for everyone. So those are sort of the life lessons I've taken from the last 3 weeks. But like I said, this video was a video about celebrating Kobe's legacy, me sort of representing my Kobe Bryant fandom. You see me got my Kobe Bryant purple jersey right there. I got my 81-point poster. I got a whole bunch of other merchandise. I've had to buy sort of the magazines that have come out because, like I said, I am a huge Kobe Bryant fan. And yeah, he represented a lot to me, a lot of my sports life. And may the Mamba rest in peace, Mamba forever, Gigi forever, and, you know, condolences and everything like that to the other victims and families in that tragic incident. And hopefully the sports world and just never has to experience anything like that again, just because this sort of transcended sports and went to that world level. You know, that's how big something like the death of Kobe Bryant is. So that does it for this video. I hope y'all enjoyed, and thank you for watching.